So now that we've had a chance to think about some of the issues and problems and questions that practicing hula in ways that may not be respectful raises, and costumes and parties and such, let's think together a bit about what might be some respectful ways of doing so. And this is something that the Stillman article really helps with. She asks, when, where, how, why, and for whom is it appropriate to study hula, and what distinguishes respectful and disrespectful ways of dancing hula? Some of the different things that we can think about are, is dancing hula respectfully about the way that you learn? Learning it from someone who has appropriate depth of training, who passes on knowledge to students as they reach appropriate levels of training. And what's the difference between that and learning it from a video or a picture, or a teacher who doesn't really know that much about hula's history and is only doing it to be fit or to get to be sexual? Might we think about appropriate hula practice as being about your intention, why you're doing it, and doing it in a way that recognizes and embodies elements of respect, courtesy, discipline, patience, determination, perseverance, wherever and however it's practiced? Is it about deepening knowledge over years of practice? Does that make, in a sense, it okay to practice hula and to be doing it in a respectful way? What about who you are and what your ethnicity and your gender and your location is? Does that matter? Is that part of the questions that one asks? These are questions that, don't have easy answers, but that are interesting to think about. Who should dance hula? Some people might answer really only Native Hawaiians in Hawaii should dance it. Others might say that anyone who grew up in Hawaii has a relationship to it. That would include locals, like anyone who's from Hawaii and lived there for a long time. Some might say that it includes other Pacific Islanders who are related culturally to Native Hawaiians, Maori, New Zealanders, Samoans, Tahitians, etc. Some might say it's okay for Native Hawaiians to do it wherever they are, even if they're not on the island of Hawaii. If they're Native Hawaiian, they're practicing hula, in San Francisco and Pennsylvania and Riverside, that's respectful and appropriate. Other people might look at the way that the way that one looks and how that might relate to whether or not it's appropriate to study hula. These are all difficult questions and kind of provocative questions to think about whether or not who you are matters when you're practicing hula or really any dance form. And then another question that is interesting to think about has to do with location. If you'll remember that hula is related to specific locations on the Hawaiian Islands. The hula history includes legends that connect hula to the land, and hula is about relationship to land. So another provocative question that might come up would be, should hula only be done in Hawaii? Or should it somehow connect to the land of Hawaii wherever it's performed, including maybe lei, or the flowers in the performance from Hawaii, or flowers that are at least Hawaiian, even if they're not from Hawaii, they're Hawaiian flowers? Should it be, related to the Hawaiian land somehow? Or should it be connected to the land and location where it's being practiced? If it's being practiced in Riverside, that it relates to land in Riverside. If it's being practiced in Pennsylvania, it relates to the land in Pennsylvania. Or does it need to have any relationship to land at all? Is it fine if it becomes not about land anymore? And then another question that might raise has to do with the particular dance movements and whether or not they can change. Does hula have to include particular movements and vocabulary? Can these change? What happens if they change? What happens if they don't change? And how do those questions relate to whether or not the hula that's being practiced is being practiced in an appropriate or a inappropriate, a respectful or a disrespectful way? Another question would be, what does it need to include? What kinds of music or attire can it include to be respectful? If it's done in coconut bras and cellophane skirts, is that disrespectful? if it's done with pop music or with contemporary dance movements, is that appropriate? And then why or why not for each of these things? These are, again, provocative questions. There's not a right or wrong answer. They're things to think about. And they bring us to questions again about gender and sexuality, how the contemporary hula practices and performances that are being done relate to images of the hula girl and to the tourist depictions that we looked at of heterosexuality. And some interesting thoughts might be raised here about what would understandings of gender and sexuality in a Kanaka Maoli context be that weren't related to the tourist histories of representations of women and representations of men, and how might contemporary choreography or contemporary dance practice relate to those understandings. So the larger question that gets raised here is learning and dancing hula that's geared towards non-Hawaiians a continuation of colonization practices, or might it be seen as an act of Kanaka Maoli history and knowledge production? Maybe it's both, and how would they be in relationship to one another would be another thing to think about.